Hello users, and welcome back to another episodic installation of my new hit series, Halo and Chillax. So this is episode 2. If you haven't seen episode 1, go watch episode 1. I noticed that there's this red spot here above my lip, like on my face, and I don't know what that is. That was not there like 20 minutes ago, so I don't know what's happening. But if you do know what's happening to me, please let me know. But yeah, welcome back everybody. This is Halo and Chill, the series in where I play Halo, and then I talk about, just whatever the fuck. So again, apologies if the camera isn't in the best position. I'm open to suggestions on anything. But yeah, obviously the elephant in the room here is the video I uploaded earlier. If you haven't seen it, someone did a transvestigation on me, and I would love that to be my first topic of discussion here, because I think the reaction to that video has been hilarious, and thank you to everyone who's been leaving kind and loving comments on that kind of stuff. Again, it's just so fucking hilarious to watch that kind of crap. But yeah, so this stems from, I did some researching, and this stems from, if you remember when boomers thought I was like the leader of Seattle's autonomous zone, I talked about that in the last episode of the Halo and Chill franchise. Apparently, people were very interested in what my gender was on like some Facebook groups or whatever, like boomers were curious. So what they did was they enlisted a known transvestigator, and they asked them, to find out, what my female digit ratio was or whatever. And that context makes the video like 15 times funnier. Like, the video by itself is great, right? But like the context of like that guy who made the video having been called upon, like someone specifically asked them, like multiple people specifically asked them to make that video on me. And I think that that is tremendous. I think that that is probably, again, the funniest aspect of that. And yeah, I just don't, I really, I'm baffled. I'm baffled by this whole thing. But one thing I noticed about the previous episode of the show is that the bitrate was a little shitty for the camera as a result of the game action. I don't know what I can do about that besides, like, I guess increasing the bitrate and hoping it doesn't fuck around, or making the game feed smaller. I don't know what this red thing is. I don't know why that's there. That's honestly like, oh shit. I don't know what that is though. Like, it's like detracting. Like, every time I look at my web camera to make sure I'm still like in frame, I see that like red thing on my lip. I don't know what that is. So again, this is a developing story. But again, I just find it so fucking baffling to me, like these right-wing fucking groups and how they fucking communicate. And it's a whole new fucking universe, dude. Like, seriously? Like, imagine saying things like the female digit ratio, and like, and imagine like the most baffling part was when they analyzed my shadow. And again, like, I literally just for the life of me cannot even begin to imagine thinking that that's something that I would ever want to do, let alone actually going about and doing it. Like, it's just like, again, the brazenness, I think, of the right wing lately is super interesting. Like, again, I made this video as well today. Like, I'm recording this on the day of, and I'm going to upload it ASAP. But I made this video today about a fascist shooting somebody at a protest. And then in the comment section, I get a bunch of fascists telling me that, like, if I were there, I'd shoot more of them. I'm glad, like, I hope it's like, dude, what? Like, do you need help? Like, I feel sorry for you. Like, there's some sort of therapeutic fucking thing that you require, and it's just horrific. Like, again, and it's just so weird. Now that I've been making these politics videos for like 6 months now, it's been just absolutely bizarre. Like, again, I had known how depraved right-wingers were for a while now. Just being trans online kind of tells you what you need to know there. But it's like, doing all this other stuff, like talking about like more like in the weeds subjects and stuff. In a lot of instances, I'm like the only YouTuber making, like only commentary YouTuber making a video about certain things. Like Chaz, for example. The only reason why a bunch of boomers found that because I was the only video that actually had like an actual, actually covering it. And so it's like, that's what I try to do. I try to cover these things that, either I haven't seen before that, I haven't even seen any sort of like inkling of, or like, that kind of stuff. I try to promote things that I feel like are under promoted, as well as like when I'm talking about certain things, I'll try to promote my, agenda here, the trans agenda. And that's why again, like the comments that I've been getting from these people are bizarre. Like I made this video about QAnon and how there's a new QAnon conspiracy theory that says that like there's a fucking cure for COVID, and it implies that if you take fucking 15,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day, like that's gonna cure COVID, not prevent COVID, like what Trump said. No. This has gone beyond prevention. This is now they're outright claiming it is a cure. And it's like, yeah, these are meme images, and like I remember when I was 14 and I would go on 4chan and then go like, haha, funny meme. But it's like, the problem here is that like these boomers are like clicking on this shit and they think it's real, and then they save it and then circulate it. And that's what's so fascinating about this whole thing, is like you see something that was obviously made by like an edgy 15-year-old, and then like you see it posted by like a fucking 60-year-old, and it's like, how does that happen? I really like, it's been one of the most interesting phenomena to examine, and just being like front and center in the culture war, as they say, has been very, very eye-opening. And like I'm trying to, like, with this, this channel and my shows, is I'm trying to like give you that kind of understanding. Is like, I don't sugarcoat anything, I don't like put any other thing other than what I think it is. I don't try to like change anything around. And a lot of YouTubers I follow, they're very careful with the words they say. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm careful with the words I say as well, but that's more so of like a trained, like I've just learned how to speak, not like a fucking 15-year-old. But a lot of YouTubers are very careful and calculated, and that's good. That has its place. But what I want my channel to be is like a place for the unfiltered, uncensored kind of like what actual people think in their brains. Like, again, I'm not going to do this whole dog and pony show. Like, not all cops are bad. Like, that's just a waste of my time. That's a waste of your time. And that brings you no new information. That gives you nothing. Like, I don't know. That's just kind of what I'm doing here. That's kind of the whole grift, as they say. And so, I mean, hopefully I'm doing a good job. I don't know. You got to tell me. But, like, it's just one of those things where, again, it's just super bizarre to, like, watch. Like most people will see that Trump does something like weird and that his followers are cringy, right? Like maybe they'll watch a video of some interviews and then that's like one thing. But for me, every single day of my life, I wake up and I get like fucking 80 comments from like boomer MAGA people, and it's like, that really does change your perspective on how actually fundamentally depraved these people are. Like having a family member who is like this versus like just seeing it online. Like a lot of people I know will have like a family member that's like full-blown MAGA stupid, and it's like, god damn, like, it's a totally different thing, like having to deal with this every single day. And that's the thing that's like one of the things I like to try to like talk about, and I like to try to hopefully translate like a more visceral understanding of what it is like to be on the front lines of the culture war, so to speak. Like as a trans person, I don't want to be bombarded with people posting my fucking address and like telling me I'm a freak and like people threatening to kill me. I don't want to be bombarded in that. But like if I want to be online, if I want to have a presence where I can speak my mind, that is a required, like, that's just what's going to happen. And it's like, really, again, thinking about that is utterly fascinating. Like, most lefties will get called, like, soy boys and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, that's just, like, par for the course. But being a trans person, I have to get called a soy boy, and then I have to get called a soy boy as a transphobic slur, then I have to get called a tranny, then I have to have people saying I shouldn't be allowed to exist, then I have to have people, like, fucking doxing me and coming to my house and calling fucking SWAT teams on me. And it's, like, all these extra steps that, like, most people don't have to deal with. Like, if you are on Twitter or whatever and you make fun of MAGA people on Twitter threads, it's like, okay, yeah, they're gonna fucking yell at me, maybe they'll fucking, like, spam me until I block them, and then it's over. And that's the whole thing, is that, like, for people like me, right, and this goes for, like, any minority, like, we can't just walk away from something. Like, as, like, a cis white male, right? You have the ability to, if you want to, just walk away from it. Like, that's the whole thing with apolitical people. Like, apolitical people overwhelmingly are likely to just not be, like, they're not, like, in, like, nothing really changes their way of life in any capacity, and therefore it's safe for them to ignore it. But, like, for me, that's just not possible. Like, I literally, like, could not, like, let alone, like, if I want to have a platform and speak my mind. Like, obviously, I can't walk away from that, obviously. But, like, if I wanted to say, like, oh, well, I'll just never use YouTube again, I still wouldn't be able to walk away from it, because these forms of discrimination are commonplace in society up to, like, government. Government actively, as of a few days ago, again, the whole Trump thing, trying to ban, like, trans people from existing, legally speaking. And it's like, you know, it's just, wow. You know what I mean? Like, again, the idea that, like, oh, this is all just optional in, like, politics is what I find really offensive. Because it, even from, like, a liberal perspective, an emphasis on liberal here, like, from a liberal perspective where they just gaslight you and tell you, like, you know, we're on your side, you know, would you rather have the fucking republic, like, that kind of bullshit. It's like, this all is trying to, like, make up a fake universe that doesn't actually exist, where, like, again, trans people aren't berated constantly for just being alive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the world we live in. And as long as that, and this goes, again, you know, for black people being shot by the police and everything. Anybody who is a vulnerable person in society who does not have the same rights, is not a first-class citizen like the white man. You know, it's like everybody in this situation, you know, we may experience different forms of discrimination, but we face discrimination solely based on what we are. And that's the problem here. And that's why I have no problem whatsoever with saying things like Black Lives Matter. And I know a lot of white people have issues with it. It's like, well, if I say Black Lives Matter, then what about white people? And that's the whole thing. It's like, what about white people? Like, what about white people? Like, seriously, like, yeah, go on. What about, like, please let me know. What is this thing about white people that's so important that, like, you get fucking, like, you get, like, embarrassed to say fucking things like Black Lives Matter? Why is that embarrassing to you? Like, why do you need something in a transaction? You know, like, again, and that's why, like, things for me as, like, a trans woman, it's, like, so viscerally, like, my entire existence breaks the fucking normal boundaries of society. Like, again, there is, like, the intersectional approach. I talked about this in a video recently. Go watch the Black Trans Lives Matter video I made a few days ago if you want to hear me have a more maybe this will be in the same depth, but I was very in depth on intersectionality. Intersectionality is, like, the idea that, like, again, I was a Bernie supporter. I worked with the campaign, you know, and I have met Bernie supporters that hate black people. I have met Bernie supporters that hate trans people. And it's like, again, you'd think, you know, if you're a Bernie supporter, you'd probably be on board with all of that shit. But no, that's the thing, was, like, the Bernie campaign was so fucking, like, you know, good at outreach that it was able to appeal to these fucking depraved losers and morons. But it's like, I've also had people that claim to be, like, socialists. I've had people that claim to have, like, a socialist Marxist critique of society, and they also hate trans people. And it's like, you'd think, like, how is that possible? But again, like, that's the whole idea of intersectionality. And again, like, black transgender people, they both experience racism. They experience sexism. They experience fucking transphobia. They experience homophobia at much more alarming rates than someone like me, or especially a cis person, or even more especially a fucking heterosexual person. You know, and that's, like, the whole thing with this whole thing. Is, like, again, I'm not the lowest on the totem pole, but I'm low enough to have a fucking vested interest in getting rid of the totem pole. And that's the whole thing. It's like, if you do not have a vested interest in getting rid of the totem pole, and you try to get rid of the totem pole, it means a lot. That's why allies are important. But if you don't have a vested interest in getting rid of the totem pole, and you think that, you know, anyone trying to get rid of the totem pole is overreacting, then guess what? You are benefiting from that class structure, and you may not realize it, like, you know, like Hillary Clinton liberals, like, they may not realize that they're benefiting from that structure, or they may realize it, but they don't want to do anything about it because they secretly like benefiting from that structure, you know, but they want to get the brownie points of pretending that they're on the right side. You know, it's like, this is like one of the main issues, is that, again, as a trans person, and as a white person, I don't know what it's like being black. I don't know what it's like being a black trans woman or a black trans man. I can imagine how bad it is, extrapolating from how bad my life is and how bad I think, you know, I perceive the, you know, the structure of the society and how bad it is to be a black person in this society and how fucked up it is and how much shit you have to deal with. But I don't experience that, you know, and so I have a natural deficit of understanding what it's like to be black in America, and I try to make up for that by focusing more on that kind of stuff, because again, as a white person, I am higher on the totem pole in a lot of areas, especially when it comes to if cops don't know that I'm transgender, right, like if they somehow don't figure it out, then I am one of the most privileged people in society when it comes to police. You know, like, as a white woman, you know, assuming that, like, I'm in public and not, like, you know, in the back of a police car with the lights off, right? Like, as a white woman, I am one of the most privileged people in society in a lot of areas of society, right? But that doesn't mean that, like, oh, okay, I'm privileged, so therefore that's okay. Like, everything that I'm benefiting from is good. Like, that, like, again, that's the whole thing. And when you have, like, cis women and cis men who directly benefit from everything, being on the top, a first-class citizen, and they don't say anything about it, then that's just de facto, like, you're just garbage. Like, I'm sorry, you're just a shitty person. Like, I don't know how else to explain it to you, other than you are a shitty person. And again, that's why I try to advocate and go, like, I try to present as much as I can, to make up for that deficit. And I really, again, you know, I hope that you can do the same with trans people. If you're not trans, I don't know how that guy survived that grenade, by the way. But if you're not trans, I hope that my videos can help you understand what it is like to be trans in the United States of America in the year 2020. That's something that, like, again, my YouTube channel, first and foremost, is like a blog, a diary. You know, me documenting my experience throughout life and what I think about life. You know what I mean? So it's like, I hope that people that view me can glean some of that information. So in the same way that I can, you know, not adequately enough, but more adequate than a lot of people in society, explain how shitty it is to be black in America, I hope that if you're ever in a situation with other cis people, you, from watching my videos or from interacting with me in any fashion, can tell other people how shitty it is to be trans in America in the year 2020. And that's kind of like the whole idea. That's the gist of what my YouTube channel is. Nice level up, by the way. And so that's kind of what I do here. And again, like, you know, it sucks. Like, it be like, I don't know, being trans in America sucks. Like, if I could go back to being like 19 years old and like not really know what being trans was and just being like a dumb teenager, like, that would be amazing. I would love for that. Like, if I could just like go back to being a fucking, like, teenage gamer white dude who, you know, had these feelings of, like, whatever, but, like, didn't know how to quantify them, so, like, I just kind of ignored it. Like, if I could go back to that, I would in a heartbeat, right? But, like, the thing is, like, there's an inevitability. And that's one thing that, like, having a Marxist critique of power kind of allows you to say, is like, okay, so I made this video in, I think, January. I made this video about Project Veritas exposing Bernie Sanders, and how someone on the Bernie Sanders campaign says that, like, you know, there's going to be, like, fucking riots if Bernie isn't the president or whatever. And I've had people, ever since the George Floyd situation, go back to that video and leave comments. And again, this is something that, like, as a YouTube creator and someone that reads all the comments, like, I can put together these sorts of, like, through lines that most people probably wouldn't, because they're just not directly exposed to it. And so again, like, I've had people find that video and then say, look, they promised they were going to burn down the cities and then they did. Like, these people are criminals, Antifa. And it's like, when you have a Marxist critique and understanding of power in society, like, this is an inevitability. Like, for example, being trans, I know that there is an inevitability with having to act upon being transgender. Like, I knew once I started fully formulating these thoughts in my brain, I knew that there wasn't a reset button. I knew that I could not go back in time. And just like with society and just like the civil unrest that we're seeing all across the country, like Bernie supporters saying that like things are going to be set on fire if Bernie's not the president, that's less of a like calling to action and more of a just knowing how history works. You know, it's like, this is basic shit. We've been through this before as a society, as a species. And that's why, again, there is a natural evolution. Like, there is a correct, like again, when I was on my first political journey, like, Bernie 2016 didn't faze me too much when he lost, because I was still in that time in my life. I was like 18 to 19. I was still at that time in my life where I was like just kind of coasting. And, you know, I would have identified as a basic social democrat or democratic socialist during the 2016 campaign. And then kind of like talking about like being trans and like formulating that and kind of dealing with the backlash kind of put me in a position where, you know, I needed to have that kind of like, you know what, like, I need to, instead of joking about racism, instead of like saying, yeah, it exists, but I'm going to do nothing about it because I don't need to, instead of doing that cringy shit, I'm going to be like, you know what, this is something that is an extreme, giant problem in our society, and I literally don't know how to not talk about it. And that's just like, again, like, and a lot of white people have that kind of thing, and a lot of cis people have that kind of thing, where it's like, they coast off of, like, just, like, the society is designed, right, in a way that brainwashes people, especially white people, into thinking certain things are just nature. Like, you know, you see a lot of white people do this thing where it's like, well, blacks kill blacks at an alarming rate. Does that mean blacks are more violent? And it's like, if you're a white person, and, like, you've never interacted in any interpersonal way or deep way with a black person, you know, you may just be like, okay, well, the data is the data. Like, again, like, your parents' school, nothing taught me that, like, racism was so prevalent in society. I didn't really understand that racism even existed up until I was, like, 13 or 14. Like, even I was told, like, oh, racism is bad and you should treat everyone equally. But, like, those words didn't really mean anything to me because, like, my parents didn't treat everyone equally. They told me to, but they didn't. My grandparents fucking openly said racial slurs. So, like, as a white child growing up, it's like, you know, it's weird. It's weird. Because, again, like, even if you have these ideas, they're like, oh, this is wrong, just, like, on a gut level, you're brainwashed into thinking that, like, this is just normal in society. And that's why, and again, I'm not excusing that, of course, but, like, that's why the perniciousness of the right wing in America and how they've corrupted education is so, not to be redundant, but pernicious. Like, again, it's gaslighting of the highest degree. They manufacture everything to present a narrative that's not true, but, like, if you're not black and you don't experience, you know, racism of that ilk, you just don't get it. Like, it's never real for you. It's always theoretical. And again, I went through this when I was a fucking, you know, teenager, and it took me longer than it should have to have and again, I don't have a full understanding as I'm not black, and I can't even pretend to have a full understanding. But for me to even understand that, like, yeah, racism still exists in America, and it's still a problem, and it didn't go away in 1965, like, that took me longer than it should have to understand. And that is a direct result of a poor education system. And I grew up in New Jersey, so this isn't like a southern state only problem. Like, I was taught about Martin Luther King, but I was never taught about, like, the lasting effects of racism on society. I was never taught, you know, I was never taught about Malcolm X. I was never taught about this stuff. I was taught a white version of black history in the 1960s. And that's the problem, is, again, you think, oh, you go to school to learn things, and then you learn this whitewashed fucking, that's the term, whitewashed history of, like, fucking how black people existed. Oh, it's just Black History Month. And once a year we do Black History Month. We talk about MLK, erase all the good stuff, pretend Malcolm X doesn't exist, like, do all this bullshit. Oh yeah, we'll tell you who invented some cool contraption in fucking 1863. You know, it's like, okay, cool. Like, that's interesting information, but, like, the presentation is so fucking terrible. And so again, my whole point here is that like the way that our society is constructed is just so diabolical and again pernicious that like I totally understand how people can coast for an extended period of time and think the way that they do. I get it, right? Like I get it. Now again, it's not an excuse. Obviously it's reprehensible, and obviously there's a difference between like, you know, the generic conservative or the generic liberal and straight out fascists. There is a difference, like on a interpersonal level, but there really isn't a difference on a material level. And that's something that, again, once you have a Marxist analysis of power and structure, like that just is an obvious conclusion. Like the idea of the fishhook theory, in that centrists will always break for fascism before they'll break for socialism. Look at Bill de Blasio, someone who openly says that like, oh, I'm a socialist in a lot of instances. You know, it's like, even then, when push comes to shove, they go for the fascist police state and they go for the propaganda before they go for anything even remotely like, you know, like any sort of positive reform, let alone defunding or whatever. You know, it's like, and that's what you have to understand. And again, that's why presenting a Marxist analysis is so dangerous. Because again, when we're in an era of Donald Trump, where like people that, you know, say coasted for 20, 30 years, didn't really understand anything, but like maybe they weren't directly racist, Trump gets fucking in there, and they go like, well, why is everyone calling Trump racist? He just said things that I learned in elementary school, and that I am under the presumption that they're facts. Their parents never taught them any better. They don't know. And that's the problem. They just don't fucking know. And instead of like trying to find out, they just go with what like is most like on a gut level. You know, you'd think, oh, talking to a black person, you'd get a better understanding of racism in America than talking to a white person. But for them, white people are more of an authority. Like for them, they're raised with the white parent, the white teacher. You know, I've only had like 2 black teachers in my entire time going to school in New Jersey. In the aughts. I was going to school in the fucking mid-2000s. And I had like 2 black teachers. Like, and it's like, what? You know, and again, like that's the whole thing. Is this is like, once push comes to shove, if you're a centrist and you don't have a Marxist analysis of power and stuff, chances are you will break for fascism. And that's why things like the fishhook theory are so absolute. Anyway, this is the last game I'm going to play. But let me finish my thought. Hello? I'm recording a video. Give me a sec. Okay. I can't even end a video without being harassed. I'm being assaulted. But anyway, once you have like a Marxist understanding of power, that's where the idea of the fishhook theory breaks off. Because again, if you're just coasting, you don't know jack shit, you're dumb, you've been brainwashed, and again, I understand it. Like being brainwashed, I was brainwashed. Like if everything in society, right, tells you something, chances are that's what you're going to believe. And if you have to actively look for other sources in order to have a better understanding of things, right? Like that's gonna, like not everyone's gonna look for those sources. And like in my situation, being trans heavily influenced me going out and fucking researching people that weren't fucking like just fucking my family directly or white people in general. Like it made me look at this thing. It made me go like, well, if my life is seemingly so shitty, or if my life would be so shitty, I was afraid to come out as trans for a significant period of time because I feared the repercussions. And during that period of time, I did a lot of learning. And like not everyone goes through that. And that's why it's like, you know, again, you have to unlearn so fucking much. And that's why white people are so cringy. And that's why cis people are so cringy. Because, like, they live in a society that fucking punches them, like, in the face with this fucking information over and over and over again, drilling it into them. And, like again, that, like, it's called brainwashing. It's propaganda. And that's the whole idea of the Hitler Youth. The whole idea of the Hitler Youth was, oh, we program these children, these impressionable children, into believing these things, and they will be the pillar of the future society. Whereas, like, people before then knew that, like, oh yeah, Jews aren't that bad. If you raise a whole generation of people to think that Jews are evil, that's going to have serious repercussions in society. And, like again, we're dealing with that right now. And again, like, a push comes to shove moment where if you're a centrist, you will break for fascism before you break for any form of socialism. And that's why I have such a Marxist view of everything, and that's why I try to have people I try to promote empathy, because empathy is the biggest tool that most people have. Like, there's going to be a solid maybe 1 in 5 people that are just pure psychopaths, like the fascist, like Trump supporting kind of people that are just, you can't reason with them, like they're just going to go to their grave being a piece of shit garbage scumbag. But like, there's that in-between zone of people that have just been lied to their entire lives and they don't know any better. And yeah, they do a bunch of awful shit as a result, and it's reprehensible. But when this moment comes where fascism goes to the mainstream, that creates more fascists. Like the people, like I like this story of someone who went to the Charlottesville rally and then now was in the National Guard as an open neo-Nazi. Like, that's how it goes. Like, someone who coasts their entire life, oh, black people are just naturally more angry, they're naturally more violent, the science says so, right? They never think to question that. And then Trump gets elected and it's like, why do liberals hate him? He looks like me. They hate him for being white. Your brain gets like, oh, okay, whatever. So then you go to this Unite the Right rally and then you meet a lot of people. And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, you're in neo-Nazi discords. You're in the National Guard and you have a gun pointed at a Black Lives Matter protester. And again, this is the natural evolution, and unless you do something very profound to break that series of, in that chain of events, then that chain of events is going to keep going. And that's why having a Marxist analysis is so important. Because again, when you say something like, oh, if there's not going to be any sort of reform whatsoever, there's going to be civil unrest, that's not calling for civil unrest. That's saying, yeah, we've seen this before. Like, cause, effect. You know, it's very simple. But anyway, I don't know. This video, I think I got my point across, so hopefully you appreciated this video. If you didn't, that's okay too. Just kidding. That's not okay. If you don't appreciate this video, I will censor you from my channel. But either way, go watch some of my other videos. I uploaded some real doozies. For the end screen on this video, I'll show some of the doozies. So go watch these videos. I hope you enjoyed. Is this red thing still here? I don't know. Either way, I'll see you later.